And I'm a bit of a risk taker, obviously, because you can see what I do as a job. So I'm one of those people that will have an action plan and I'll just go and get it done.
All right, welcome to the Aussie Ambitions podcast. We're here on the topic of truffles, and there's a whole lifestyle that goes along with it. We've got a guest. It's Debbie Oliver. Hi, Debbie. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Excellent. So first of all, welcome. I know you got a lot on the go. You pulled up in your nice branded, I'd call it a ute, basically, but it's a really polished-looking machine. Fair to say you own and run a company, yeah?
Yes, I do. Yeah, my little truffle truck, I call it.
Excellent. It's very clean, by the way.
Yes, it is. It gets clean once a week.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So I'll introduce you as the owner and founder of Lady Truffle Fine Foods.
Yes.
Can you just tell us a little bit about what you've been working on?
Okay. So my business is Gold Coast based with a warehouse in Yatala, and I source and supply high-end fine niche foods for chefs, restaurants, and foodies.
Okay, source and supply. So there's, I guess this will be a truffle education for a lot of people.
Yes.
And perhaps most of our audience would be outside of Australia. So what's your general guess on people's knowledge of truffles? Is it something people know a lot about or not so much?
In Europe, more so than Australia. It's certainly it's ingrained in the culture of the French and Italian and the Europeans. Whereas in Australia, it's a little bit of a newer product and has really only been grown in our country for the last 30 years. So when I did start my business, it was very interesting to launch that product, truffle, and the name Lady Truffle, and everybody thought it was chocolate.
Yes.
So it was an education process that I had to go through with a lot of my marketing to educate people what truffle was and how valuable it is and how wonderful the product is.
So you mentioned chocolate, and it actually jumped into my mind. What is the connection? Why would they think it's chocolate?
Okay, so the truffle chocolate was named after a truffle. So it looked the same, and that's actually quite interesting because I actually looked it up myself. I thought, wonder why truffles got the same name, but it's because the first truffle chocolate looked like a truffle and they called it truffle. And
this is perfect because you have brought some items today. So the people listening in are going to have to check out the YouTube episode, and please do that. And let's just show them what it looks like on camera. So let's just get that. Let's have a look.
So these are actually French Paragords. They are a winter black truffle that I brought in, and I bring these into our country, Australia, and import them every week for our chefs and restaurants to use. So that's one little one there. You can smell them in the room.
Absolutely, you can smell them in the room, and it's sort of like it's aromatic. So I wouldn't say it's sort of like it's not super strong, but like it's there.
Yep. And so they're like a little underground. It's an underground mushroom. To put it into perspective, that is a little underground mushroom, quite an expensive aromatic thing. And the reason it has so much aroma is in order for this to reproduce and to survive, it actually gets dug out of the ground by animals. That's pigs and squirrels, and then through those animals going to the bathroom, the spores go back into the ground, and that's how they reproduce. So a truffle needs animals and it needs aroma to be found.
Okay. And so you've transported them here in like a sealed container, basically, right?
Yes.
And then just displayed them on the desk. So again, just for people listening in, just to get a feel for, you can Google and look at images, and it'll be interesting to see if there's different coloring for that. But we're seeing it's quite a black.
Yep. So this species of truffle is Melanosporum, which is the most expensive of the black truffle. And we have several different species of truffle. The most common that people hear of is a white truffle and a black truffle. So the season at the moment is this winter truffle called a Paragord. You'll see there's some that come in a colour very similar to this, and there are different species which may be like a summer or burgundy truffle, but this is the most expensive of the black. It has a stronger aroma and a more fruity, nutty flavour.
Wow. So obviously this is something that's of like high value goods, and maybe the customer, the end user, is also the price points on this stuff's quite high, right? Yeah,
so these are retailing at the moment for about $2,800 a kilo, and they usually pay by the gram or buy a little truffle to use for a dinner, for a dish, for eggs or pasta. So in a restaurant, you may actually just choose your own truffle to be shaved over your dish on a steak or a pasta.
Yeah, I mean, wow. So obviously, it's restaurants working with this. Do you get people that are trying to buy direct, like
Absolutely.
home chefs and so on?
Yeah, so private foodies that have experienced the truffle. There's certain people that just cannot get enough. They love truffle. They love the aroma, flavour, mushroom lovers, fine dining, and they will reach out directly to me to say, listen, we're having a private dinner. Can you deliver a truffle over for us to enjoy? And it's such a talking point there. There's such a mystery to the truffle, the allure of the truffle, we call it. And that's that connection between man, nature, and an animal. And that's how they're found and how they're grown and how mysterious they are, because you never know how many you're going to get under a tree.
Oh, is that right? So it's so there's this discovery process, basically, or like hunting. I think you referred to it in our earlier chat. Is that right?
Yes, that's true. So the truffle hunters will go out with their loyal companion, and it's dogs these days, whereas back many, many years ago, it was pigs. They no longer use pigs. So it's dogs that they train up to go and find these truffles in the wild or in farms.
And so you have dogs yourself, or your company does?
No. I've got orchards, but there is businesses in Australia that specialise just in truffle hunting and training their dogs to do this job.
Okay.
So you can hire them to come out to your orchard or your farm to come and search for the truffles, or there are many farms that have their dogs on site. And some of these are rescue dogs. It's a beautiful story. So they can get their dogs in and train them to go and work on the job. Wow.
Okay. I mean, but it would be a rare find, yeah? Like it's not, these items are quite rare, is fair to say?
Yeah, so look, some farms may find, only a couple truffles under a tree, and others find kilos. So this is the mystery of the truffle. It's how it's grown and whether you do a great job, and if you're in the right environment and the right trees and the right climate. And Australia, we have a very strong truffle industry here. We're the 4th largest producer in the world. So we've excelled actually in growing truffle here, and we export quite a lot of the truffle into the European market when their season isn't producing.
I see. So when you describe 4th largest, that's the country of Australia?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Okay.
So we have over 300 farms in our country, over I think 180 that are commercial, and they're based everywhere around the country, including some in southeast Queensland now, but mainly in Tasmania and Western Australia. So those 2 regions are very famous for their truffle, Tasmania, and also Canberra and Melbourne and South Australia are now starting to produce great truffle. The truffle needs, they say, around 7 frosts to mature and ripen. And it also requires certain rainfall and certain temperatures to be able to get the truffle to be of quality, of value, and of aroma and of flavour. So there's lots of farms out there, and some produce truffle that may not be as strong as others. And my job is to go and visit these farms and to try to provide my foodies and my chefs with some of the best truffle that our country has to offer.
Yeah, wow. So I guess the distribution, like you said, you're here. Where do you spend most of your time? Are you here on the Gold Coast?
Yes. So what I tried to do to ensure that the guest experience is a great one is take these truffles in to the chefs myself so they can choose the truffles that are going to work for the dish that they're going to use them for. I also deliver them within 24, 48 hours of receiving them, so they're very fresh. And this is imperative because the truffle flavour and aroma will actually start to disintegrate and leave as the truffles left the ground. So they really should be used as fresh as possible. So yeah, that's my world, is just going and finding these little dirt gems and these little dirt diamonds and all the different names they give them, because they're quite expensive, and getting them out to these foodies that just can't get enough.
Yeah, no, that's good. I appreciate it. All that stuff's very clear and maybe supports, maybe some people know a little bit about it and that they can look more into it in terms of maybe the flavoring and the taste and experiencing it properly.
Yeah, so and I help chefs with truffle talks and dinners. So we'll have guests come in and we'll do a big event where sometimes they could bring a dog in. They can see the truffle being found in a restaurant, which is quite clever. But it's also educating the guests on how mysterious these little underground mushrooms are, and then bringing that magic to the table.
Wow. So is there any other like secondary type of a mushroom that you might get involved with, maybe like on a seasonal basis or a once off? Like, I don't know. I mean, we see the truffles, and that's probably you probably got your hands full with that. But is there any other mushroom type product that you might?
Yeah, so I actually go out mushroom hunting myself for the pine mushrooms, which could be anything from a slippery jack to a saffron milkcap. And then there's a guy in Adelaide that finds a porcini, which is a very famous mushroom, which can be quite large. I've got some photos on my social media where, I mean, some of them were, if I said to you, nearly your foot.
Sure.
It's like large, massive, beautiful porcinis, which are the king of the mushrooms. Yes, we've got a bit of a wild mushroom supply here in Australia. There's morels found now in Victoria as well, which is like a little tiny, it's almost like a cone that's like a little house. These little beautiful meaty morels that are now found here. So, yeah, we've got a bit of a mushroom space, and they were brought over with the pine plantations from Europe.
Okay, now the pine mushroom rings a bell for me. I probably just mentioned this. People would be surprised, to learn a little bit more about how I've had some experience with this. But yeah, just have you been to Canada?
No, I haven't.
Haven't been to Canada. Okay,
yet.
So just to describe, like pine mushrooms was something that in my area, where I was hometown, basically, they would pine mushrooms was very a big part of, I guess, there's like a local effort to go out and cultivate these and pull them out of like wild mushrooms, and then they would be shipped to like an overseas location, and it was Japan at the time. But I don't know that there was. All I remember about it was a very high value mushroom, and it could swing, like the pricing was like daily, so you'd be checking the price, and that would drive. If the price was very high per kilo per pound, people would just come out of the woodwork. So teachers would take the day off, and they'd go out and pick mushrooms, and whatever your day job was, you were just gonna go get your crop of mushrooms and try to get in on the cash grab.
Yes, and that's because of the supply. So some weeks there's 100 kilos out there, and another week there might only be 5 kilos. So the price fluctuates depending on the supply and demand. Same with truffles.
Same with truffles, is it?
Yeah.
Amazing. So, and do you think that phenomenon exists where there's these kind of hobbyist pickers out there, either in any of our countries or across the world?
Yeah, look, there's some states in Australia that you need a license to do it. And it's also very, like I would never take mushrooms from someone that didn't know what they're doing. There's a lot of poisonous mushrooms out there, death cap, the white ones, so you kind of got to be careful.
Okay.
But, yeah, there's, it's, what do they say? You only get a bad mushroom once. So.
Oh, wow. There's lots of places we can go to this mushroom chat. Yeah, so poisonous mushrooms, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and there's a lot of mushrooms now being cultivated. So we've got like the lion's mane, and the oyster mushrooms that are supplying restaurants and foodies now, which are quite colourful and very, very interesting looking. But I tend to stick with the wild ones, the ones that are completely found out there based on Mother Nature and the right rainfall and the right temperature and the right conditions. So a little trickier than the most.
For sure. So does it feel like, is there a bit of a natural, I think you described it earlier, but the people involved, the natural aspect of it is just a big part of it. It's like knowing that it's from the earth and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. Feeling that connectivity. And I think it's really important this day and age to be able to go out and enjoy nature in that sense. So for me, it's almost a pleasure to spend my weekend out there mushroom hunting or being amongst the farming industry or the country. And I think it's soothing. It's certainly something that gets you away. When I have a business that spends 90% of my time on social media or a bit of paperwork or driving to restaurants personally to deliver product, to get away for just 48 hours or 24 hours and do that, it's almost like a complete recharge. Soul therapy.
Yeah, interesting. So is that, I guess we might be stumbling into the origins of the business, like how this all started. Is that fair to say where it came from? A bit of like a personal
yeah, you could say that. I did 9 years in a corporate role and sold my soul and felt that it was necessary to move on and move out of that space. And I saw the opportunity to do what I do here on the Gold Coast. And that was primarily due to a change in the foodie scene, in the opportunity with social media and being able to start a business in that space at that time when people were taking so many photos of their food. It was quite easy to touch base with the foodie scene and the restaurant and chef scene. and my business was able to take off quite quickly that way. And also the dining scene here with the New Star Casino opening up and all those fine dining restaurants, it was almost like the perfect storm for me. So I decided to leave the safety and security of a corporate job with a good figure and salary and go and jump into something that I was so passionate about to get the hell out of an office.
Geez, a lot of people are probably nodding their heads right now thinking, yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's the combination of factors, right? Like the market was there was an opportunity there, and then maybe like mentally you were just like ready for something new.
Yeah.
Did anybody try to talk you out of it?
Yeah, look, when I did go to leave the company, there was a lot of talk from the board. When I left, they did replace me with 4 staff members. So I think I'd actually almost burnt myself out. I've got a little son. He was in the office with me on the weekends. It just was getting out of control.
Wow. Okay.
And I was rebranding these businesses around the country. So I was traveling a lot and working a lot. And I'd been introduced to this kind of beautiful food, having lived overseas for 10 years. So I had this passion to get back into enjoying amazing food and to be able to work with it and then also devour it at the same time is pretty lucky.
Yeah. Okay. So there it is. So you definitely appreciate the product as a consumer. Yeah.
Oh, food's everything, and it's more to do with being able to share that food with people. So when I do a presentation or a talk about caviar or truffle, that journey that I can take the foodie on is just the best part of my whole job. It's enjoying that the story, the journey, how it came about, where it came from, why it's so beautiful or luxurious or unique or rare. And that goes for a lot of my products are quite, it's everything from your saffron to your gold, to your truffles, the albers. I mean, they can be up to $20,000 a kilo. So there's a big expense in some of the products that I use, and I want to make sure that the guest or the client or the chef or the restaurant or the people that are working with the food understand why it's got to that and where it comes from.
Mm. Yeah, I'm definitely just curious about the authenticity of it. Like you described, such a high value item, and then there's like you said, whether it's synthetic or cultivated in some way. You described that, right? It's an alternative to wild. It's like some kind of lab format.
Yeah. So with the mushrooms, you can get cultivated or wild.
Cultivated. Okay.
With a truffle, it's important for me to educate my chefs and restaurants and front of house in the hospitality what truffle they're using and why it's more expensive than other truffle. And that was really eye-opening. I think when I started and launched my business, there wasn't a lot of education around the different species of truffle being sold out there in the market. So a lot of my chefs were like, wow, we didn't realize that this truffle is half the price because it's a different species. So for me, that being able to give some sort of credibility and authenticity to this industry and to the speciality of this truffle was just mind-blowing. I loved it. I love educating. I love empowering. I love the fact that the chef in the restaurant and the front of house can go out and offer something to their guests and speak about it with confidence. It's really important.
Absolutely. And I can imagine that the clientele and the restaurants and the chefs that you're working with, they're aspiring to greatness and differentiating and experience. So, you want to have that special element. So you're not going to be looking for the shortcuts and something.
Look, yeah, people go out to a restaurant now and they want an experience. They're not going there just to sit and fill their tummies. They're going because they want to understand little things like the prosciutto, where it's come from and why it's so expensive, or cheeses. Every bit of food that you eat, it's an experience for the mouth, for the mind, for the visual, for the whole impact of going to a restaurant now needs to be special. It needs to be special to actually get the person in the door. So if they're not walking in the door and receiving incredible service or getting attention or understanding why they're spending the money on the food that's put in front of them, I just think it's a whole journey that the hospitality industry is working on and with, and that's the experience that the guest has when they come into that restaurant. Yeah. So I find when the chef comes out and walks even around a room, people get a bit excited. Like it's good to have that engagement and that guest client experience.
That's neat. And even during those moments where you're introducing it or educating or just having a little bit of a up close with this truffle, are are they always looking for a taste? Like, are they looking to consume it? I was just wondering, is the education and the origins of it enough, or do they really want that understanding of the
flavor? I guess it's part of the whole experience, which is, when they do a truffle talk, well, they're going to receive the truffle on the dish anyway. Why not explain to them how it got there? Caviar is another one. I love the caviar talks I do because everyone has this perception of caviar, whether it's sustainable or whether it's a over fishy flavour. And then when I do a caviar, which I'm doing one tonight, I guarantee you those guests will leave with a whole different perception of caviar and what it's about and the history, the romance and the flavour. It's a journey.
Yeah. Oh, well, we should probably just get the website out there so people can actually discover the range. But you do have you got caviar in, like, I see red and black and
so caviar and roe. But caviar is the term that's used for the eggs or the roe that comes from a sturgeon fish.
Okay. Just
that fish. So you shouldn't really use the term caviar for anything other than the eggs from a sturgeon. So
that's good. So this is that educational piece coming across, and we're going to push it out to, just look. I mean, people that know it and appreciate it and consume it. But I think it's good. Do you think is it a product that you can draw people into the category? Like, I always see it as maybe it's an elite type thing where people go their whole lives without ever trying it.
And that's the greatest part about my job. My favorite part is being able to give something to somebody that could necessarily be seen as a bucket list item. You're never going to get to try it. So I've been fortunate enough to launch my business at a time when a lot of these products have not been so elitist, have been able to be more affordable. And caviar is a very interesting one because around 30 years ago, they banned the fishing of the wild sturgeon. At that same time, people were opportunists and they created farms to produce sturgeon. That's 30 years ago. It takes, for some of the huso, which is the beluga caviar, which is the most expensive, it takes around that for the sturgeon to produce this egg. So now there's almost, and I'll get in trouble for saying this maybe, but there's almost an oversupply of caviar happening. So the prices have come down. It's more affordable. It's more achievable for somebody to actually experience something that maybe 30, 40 years ago they would never have been able to afford. So tonight's talk, I'll have people in the room and I'll be able to show them and allow them and give them that experience of having something that maybe they never, ever thought they could. It's cool.
That's really cool. I mean, I like how you sort of you've gone much beyond, the product and the brand and there's the logo is very nice and it looks very well presented. I imagine that supports everything that you're doing. But then you get into this experiential and events and is it one-on-one or is it like, what's the ratio of yourself as the speaker and then the people in the room?
So it depends. If it's a big event, I mean, I have a passion for presenting and I have a passion for public speaking, and that stems way back even when I worked in the travel industry at schools and the university in Sydney. I had 5,000 people, so I love it. I get a bit of a buzz. The ones that I do here on the Gold Coast or in Brisbane or Noosa, so Noosa Eat and Drink Festival, I'm doing that next weekend. There'll be anywhere from 12 people up to 50, 100, 200 in the room. And I just love bringing to them that journey, that whole experience. So
yeah, that's powerful. I mean, and then hopefully from there they are passing on the knowledge, right? Does that happen?
For sure.
Where it's not just you and them, but it goes into this whole world.
I want them to get excited about it, and that's passion. That's why we do what we do. And the chef too. It's a great chance because a lot of chefs aren't extroverts. They're quite their personality type is creative, and they may generally sit in a kitchen all day, every day, and not get out much. So it's nice to be able to work with chefs to get them out and to feel confident to come out and speak about products and their dishes. And it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
That's neat. And then just, again, getting to know yourself a little bit, would you sit down in some of the fine restaurants as a bit of a, not an anonymous experience, but at arm's length, so you're not, because obviously you'd be privileged to know everyone and know the chef and they bring out
absolutely.
Special treatment. But do you go in a bit of that stealth mode and experience?
I try to. The great thing about my business is I can support the restaurant back. So I'll always pay for my meal. I'll always go in and be a guest and take people in, especially to restaurants that support small business or support me. And that's one of the best parts about being able to give back, because I love going out for dinner anyway. So it's easy to enjoy that and bring friends along. But yeah, there's certainly places that I'll go that I go into, and I can, you don't want to be critical. You can see things can be done better. And that could be the fact, this is one example. White asparagus from Italy was brought in, and I'd gone to a restaurant, and the front of house lady didn't know that I was the one that had actually brought it in to supply to the chef. And the plate was put down in front of me, and she walked away without even saying that this is something magic. Yeah, and I was shocked. Like, I thought there was so much opportunity for her to talk about whether the asparagus was the French wild asparagus that's found out in nature, or whether it's a white asparagus, and why is it white? Like, there's so much opportunity to drum up that experience for the foodie. And foodies are passionate. Like, they love it. And you can tell when you're talking to a foodie whether they want to know more or they just want you to go away. So you've got to be able to understand body language and be an empath, I guess, to figure that. But for some foodies, they can't get enough.
Oh, that's neat. Look, I mean, it's definitely, I imagine that's, if your interest is there, your passion is there, I mean, it's a very vibrant kind of environment, right? Like, it's not a dull, find me a dull restaurant. Most of them are. And
people love food. Exactly. And it brings people together. There's nothing more simple than having a conversation about food in front of you and enjoying that. So that's where, you're avoiding topics that can be quite controversial. When you go into a restaurant, all your friends and family get together, no one says no to getting together over food. It's the first thing, oh, sure, done, or like a drink and food. It's just brilliant.
Yeah. Oh, that's neat. Just to bring it back to you being in the restaurant, having that experience of it's a missed opportunity. They didn't, present and tell the full story. That's probably a lesson for people listening in about, if you've got a product or a service or anything that you have a passion that you've taken it to the front line, but then it hasn't translated into that consumer experience. Maybe have a think about that, because I think that's probably pretty common. People, there's so much sweat that goes into getting it that far, and all the storytelling in the product, and even the rarity sometimes. But sometimes it's just not that final step is missed, and yeah, just it's
because it is that the products got there, the chefs done their magic to get it to taste and look and present well, and then that final one step is that front of house coming out and saying, here we go, this is your wild French asparagus, or this is your Italian, or this is your truffle that's from Mandurah in Western Australia. Enjoy.
Oh, that's good.
And then people will either say, where's it from? Or what is it again? That's when you can have that conversation, and it's great.
That's neat. And that's actually an opportunity to learn from people who have those roles. Like we're looking at people in hospitality and front of house, and just different types of industries. But it'd be interesting to get that perspective of someone that is there and has the story and they're proud of the menu and they're all those things. They're able to deliver it, and they get all the glory because they come back and say that was amazing. So it's like, hopefully that goes back to the chef and it goes back upstream, and you get all the feedback as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're going to take photos of food. Foodies are going to take photos now, and they're going to post it. And there's so much going on in the hospitality space that you really do need to be considerate of that final step, which is that front of house presenting and being polite and smiling and being into the food they're putting out.
Oh, nice. Well, so I'm going to switch into foodie mode just for a second.
That's easy.
And just to know where this can be used. So I can understand a main dish as an enhanced flavor, or like a luxurious flavor. Does it come up in an appetizer or in a dessert? Where across the
meal? Truffle? Yeah. Look, it comes up. It depends on the chef and how creative they want to get. But one of my favourite dishes on earth, and it's unforgettable, is white truffle ice cream. And it's something that every year when I import the albas from Italy, that I ask one chef at least to make me some white truffle ice cream. And it's just incredible. It's almost like if you think of salted caramel, how that, exploded. Everyone wanted salted caramel on everything. Well, white truffle, it's like a mushroomy ice cream. It's just incredible.
That's fun. And is that an Australian experience that you had, or was that overseas somewhere?
No, I actually had it in Australia. Yeah, I actually had it in Australia.
That's neat. I mean, we'll be interesting to see in the comments if people have ever sampled some of this, or like, how do you discover this kind of rare truffle ice cream, and especially the white version. Just thinking about and then I'll just cover off on the beverages side of things. I'm thinking of, like, a lot of times in spirits and things, there's like infusion, so it might be infused with certain kind of wheat or grass or,
yes,
anything in that world.
Gin may be next. It's so popular at the moment, but certainly I've had whiskey producers, I would guess you would call them, reach out for truffle to try to flavour a whiskey, and certainly the Asian market they're crazy about truffle anyway.
Yeah.
So to add it to a whiskey is a surefire winner.
Okay. Yeah. So you mentioned that it's bigger in other markets. So is it any one in particular? Like I'm thinking like Hong Kong, maybe some big metro corporate areas.
So when we export this product overseas, our main market has in the past, obviously with COVID being a bit of a challenge, but definitely Hong Kong, Japan, Vietnam. We've got a lot of Asian clients that love the Australian truffle. And during the other season, when the French can't get it, they will buy from us and use it in their marketing for London, Italy, France, Spain. So, yeah, we sell a lot of truffle overseas, but the Asians absolutely love it. They love their truffle. Even Dubai. Dubai's got a massive market as well. It's just that fine dining and everyone wanting to have that wonderful experience with their guests at the table and enjoying something that maybe, it's just the celebration of life with food.
Wow, just hearing about the international stuff, it makes me think like you must have had to fast track, or just maybe you just had that knowledge already, but the whole like supply chain side of things and ensuring, like, maybe we can just touch on, is there a shelf life for a truffle? And like you said, you want to cultivate it, but or pick it, but how long does that before you need to serve it?
And again, the logistics of exporting and importing truffle is a challenge. It's a bit of a dice roll until you can get it right. But it certainly needs to be packaged and transported very carefully, very quickly, and at the right temperatures. And it's such an expensive product to play with, so it's always a challenge.
So it would never ever get close to freezing point, but it's like low, like cool. Is that the?
Yeah. So you really don't want it to be going over. Let's say 4 degrees is perfect, but you can't freeze it. Once you freeze a truffle, it doesn't behave. It just turns to mush. It disintegrates. So you cannot allow it to freeze. And I mean, that is the challenge. I think even I spoke to you earlier, just yesterday, I received a shipment in from Europe that had unfortunately been frozen through freight. So that broke my heart to go and collect that and to clear it with all the documentation and so forth, and to receive nearly, $12,000 worth of product that is frozen and unusable for my chefs at that point for what they want it for.
And no one's, it's not like there's any fallback claim or anything.
Yeah,
it's not like
no insurance for perishables. It's a bit of a challenge. So, so there's just this whole investigation then that goes into at what stage did it get treated differently, or where did it get frozen? Was it at the handling side here where the documentation gets processed, or is it during the actual freight, from wherever it may be, whether it's Italy or France or Spain or wherever the truffle is coming from at that time, where along that line. You can buy little discs now that you put into the shipment, and that disc will record the temperature and let you know at what stage that happened. So there is ways to combat it. But
that was actually one of my questions, is around like at some point, like this world is like becoming highly technological and there's tracking devices and stuff. So is that kind of as good as it gets, as you get a real time kind of monitoring?
Absolutely. And when you're doing large shipments, you could be doing 50 kilos out of Australia. There needs to be some clarity about that process and how it's managed and to do it well, because you don't want to be providing such a high-end product and something going wrong. But believe me, it does. It does.
And it's obviously painful, but you just go with it and breathe. And
yes,
just on the personal side and how you keep the balance with all that. Like I saw you take a deep breath and just
because I was just thinking about the Italian white truffles at the beginning of the season, and I lost 2 shipments.
You did
in a row. Yes.
So how do you manage all this? So do you get a little bit of help in the business somewhere you've brought in people to play certain roles? Like, is it fair to say you wear all the hats for the business? So
I certainly have been the orderer, supplier, deliveries, all of that sort of side of things. I have turned to certain farms for product. And I have a guy in Sydney and Melbourne, some people that also import, because sometimes you need volume. So with this game, whether it's certain products that we bring in from Europe or Asia or wherever we bring in an import, there certainly needs to be volume for it to be viable. So there's certain people that can go in with you for your importing. Okay. With the exporting, obviously the volume of the product that you're sending out, you would need to source from certain farms or certain people that have that product at that size or volume. Yeah.
And then in like you said, the supply and demand kind of fluctuates a little bit, and you get a situation like that where the shipment was coming through. Does that mean that there's just nothing on the menu for that week?
Yeah, absolutely. And the crazy thing is the price, unfortunately, will go very high at the beginning of the season when there's less product, less truffle to be found. So the price is high, but the quality of the product isn't necessarily great because the season peaks in the middle. So during the middle of that season, suddenly the truffle's full of flavour and aroma and it's at its best, and there's a lot more around. And that is usually when you'll find it a little bit cheaper. So it's like any seasonal product. You kind of, and we were talking about the mushrooms earlier and the different fluctuation in prices. Well, at the moment, if you were to find them, you might get, I don't know, $15, $20 a kilo. And then when they become less, they go up to $40 a kilo. So there's a big difference in the price. And the same with the truffle. At the beginning and end of the season, the price can almost double. There's less out there. Everyone wants it. It might be on a menu, so they're desperate to get it. And it's a shame because you're trying to manage a menu item with a totally different price point for being nearly double.
Yeah, it's wild. I'm just thinking of like for some of those academics out there, it makes a really interesting economics case of, just how this all.
And it's communication and trust. Like I'll go to my restaurants and I'll say, guys, the price has gone up. And because I've been working with them and I'm completely transparent and communicating that, it's really important because I could say to them, guys, it's going to cost you a couple $100 more this week or a couple $1,000 more on the kilo. And, they might not be able to afford that for the menu, but they've got to trust me, and that's how it works. At the moment, even the euro for importing and freight is double. It's only €800 just to bring a little box in.
Is that because of all not as many planes? Is that what's happening?
The freight options have been limited, and with all the transport being limited for passengers not coming into the country anymore, we've found that there's maybe one option to bring a whole shipment in from France or from Italy. So you're limited now by the freight options, and the prices have just gone through the roof.
Wow. So all that in the background, that little bit of adversity and all that, did it discourage you at all? You thought, geez, this business is great, but it's stressing me out?
Yeah, definitely. There's times when you just can't keep, you think you can't keep going. But the good thing is walking into that restaurant and the chef knows how much effort and energy you've put in. You can be on the phone at midnight speaking to hunters and suppliers over in Europe to try to get this product in. Definitely been a challenge over COVID, which is I guess, also where you keep going, because if it's not easy to do, not everyone's doing it. So that's where the business is interesting, because if it was easy, everyone would do it. And it's not.
That's a good point. And you never really know how quickly, I think for a lot of businesses here, the recovery came back and people were thankful that it was a little bit in the right direction. It's like, okay, we can get out again. We can talk, we can meet, and we can dine. But the business has kind of swung back pretty quickly. So that
the hospitality industry right now, they're absolutely getting burnt out.
Right. Because it's like the full pendulum in the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm.
And
so those that have survived and those that have stayed open, they had to adjust the sales and completely transform the day-to-day activity that was happening in their business. Obviously, the takeaway option was one way to keep those doors open, and then working out how that financially would cost out for staffing and for whatever way that food had to be produced or processed or cooked to be a takeaway option as opposed to presented on a plate. So the restaurants that have stayed open have been through that mental challenge as it is, and then the exhausting hours of trying to figure out how to transition into a takeaway space. Then you've got the fact that the restaurants that have stayed open have never closed through all of this, right? So my business, as an example, I didn't stop. And when you then go into the fact that we've gone through a Christmas period and now we're in February and March, which is usually around about where we all have our Christmas parties, we take time off, we give everyone a break. There is no stopping. These restaurants out there, like I've been out every night this week visiting my restaurants, and they are to the brim. The positive out of COVID is that they now have people that are booking to get in. There's no walk-ins. It's making more effort and energy to actually get yourself a table. and being able to turn those tables over at 6, 8 and 10, and people being more structured with their dining experience and being more grateful. But the restaurants, honestly, they're so busy right now. It's fantastic. Very busy.
Amazing. And that'll be in pretty stark contrast to probably still around the world. Many different places you probably are aware, like lots of restrictions and everyone's kind of going through their own,
and limited
reset.
Staff. We've got less staff in the pool for the hospitality world. A lot of people didn't go back.
Right.
A lot of people would have relied on front of house staff from overseas, which we don't have. So there is a bit of a honestly, a bit of a burned out feeling out there in the industry right now. And I speak to chefs that are doing hours that are extraordinary. The front of house that are just like, oh my God, it's not slowing down. Normally we have a break now. So it's a little bit of a spin out there at the moment with what's going on. And it'll be interesting to see how this pans out. I think the government just released today half price airfares going to all of these places. So we're about to see even a busier April. So
amazing.
Easter.
Amazing how you really have to think about all these factors, right? And then come back to how does it affect you, your business?
And it's good. And the good thing is that everyone is trying to support small business. And I've certainly found that COVID for me was all about connectivity. So even though there was social distancing and people being told to keep away and keep home, the connectivity that happened for me with restaurants and businesses in the area was phenomenal. I reached out and I tried to make an enormous effort with people in my industry to make sure, A, they're okay, but also how do we now connect and move forward and try to make sure that we're all okay? Because as they say, a rising tide lifts all boats. So our industry, we're only as good as each other and trying to ensure that we all do okay. And the push for supporting local. My business was, everyone sort of reached out. Deb, you're the small local business here. How do we help make sure you're still here? Because if they're not buying from me, then they probably have to buy from Sydney or Melbourne or from somewhere else. So we're trying to keep everyone going. Yeah,
absolutely. I've heard that many times with different business owners, and it's good to see that it's across industries and it's probably a mix of the goodwill and just wanting to help, appreciating your help to support their business to date. But then probably there's a bit of business safety. Like you said, if they were having to rely on an external product from overseas, they may not be able to get it.
Yeah, and
so it's
that's what's happening right now. So because we are getting busier, I'm saying to people, guys, there's a delay in shipments and there's a complication in freight at the moment. So do we find an alternative local supply of that product? Or how do we make this work better because we now need to buy bigger volumes? And so there's a lot more communication and connectivity and appreciation in the whole industry.
Yeah, wow. Look, very, very cool insight. Like, for people that are just looking at even the category of business that you're operating, it's sort of it's certainly a passion and appreciation for the product, but
it's risky.
It's a certain luxury market in the end, right? I mean, it's so. Look, just curious about yourself. I mean, what I was listening to is all the challenges that you've had in creating this business and operating the business. Where did it come from? Like, how did you get the skills to do that? And was that something you had to force yourself to? A bit of self-teaching about, okay, I've just got to learn importing, exporting.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting, isn't it? So there was no, okay, so when I did...
take us through like where you
When I did decide to start this business, I went down and shadowed a guy in Melbourne and Sydney to see how they were doing it down there, which certainly was so valuable because there is no, you don't really need to reinvent the wheel as such. So I found that was a good platform to kick off from. But, I think for me, I've always had a fairly strong business sense. I've never been to university, so I certainly don't have the academic qualifications as such. But it's just pure. I mean, if I had to go through what I went through to start my business again, I wouldn't have done it. So you have no idea how everyone goes, oh, it's so good and exciting to have your own business. I mean, 7 days a week, 20 hours sometimes, you are churning things over in your mind. And I'm a bit of a risk taker, obviously, because you can see what I do as a job. So I'm one of those people that will have an action plan and I'll just go and get it done. And I'll deal with everything as the tide changes. So my day could have a bit of a to-do list and I get to 10 o'clock and so many things have happened and I've just got to adjust completely all day, every day, what I'm doing as it happens and unfolds. It's crazy. But that's my personality type. So I'm very fortunate that my personality can manage that. Maybe ADHD, can't focus, kind of can jump to this, to that, to survive.
So you basically, I guess if you were to if someone took you out of this role and planted you in a different role, fair to say you would gravitate back to this, like you're in your spot. Like this is exactly
I definitely enjoy what I do. Absolutely. And it's evolving and I'm constantly trying to figure out how to make time management better and how to structure more of my business. And that comes with time. When I first started, I pretty much would be anywhere at any time to be able to get business to work. Now I value my time and I'm valuing, and people value also what I've provided as a service. So I'm able to dictate a little more how that looks moving forward. So guys, this needs to happen for that to happen. Otherwise, I can't give you the best service or provide you with the best product. So I'm learning that now and I'm finding at the 5th year that that's where that pivotal change happens anyway with a business, because you're growing and you're growing so big that you need to start to adjust how that model looks.
That's very interesting. You mentioned 5th year. Actually, our company's in the 5th year as well. And I hadn't really looked deeper in terms of, how other businesses are pacing. You just kind of go with what's needed. And like you said, there's a bit of evolution. You feel like that in itself is a good thing if you feel like the business is evolving. Like you said, is there some point where you would build it and try something else, or do you feel like yourself, are you adding little modules over time?
Yeah. So initially I started off just running around with Truffle and trying to get restaurants to be involved and buy it or supply and play with it. And now I've moved into, especially during COVID, I had the opportunity to slow down during COVID, and I branched into now growing truffle trees. So I've got a couple of orchards out there now that I was able to get up and running, and I also am producing product. So I've now got, due to COVID, there was an oversupply of truffle in the industry last year in our country, and so I went and bought a lot and made some products with it, and I'm trialing some certain things which will be launched soon. So
there we go.
So opportunity, it's all about trying to diversify so that you will survive no matter what, because there's going to be people that are going to do what I do and slowly come along behind me or beside me. And so I need to be able to work out where I fit in and how I evolve and how I offer more, but also managing my time and my energy. So it's been good. It's been really good.
That's neat. And again, this is all, within Australia, the innovation, the client, a lot of your clients are supportive in the local area too, right? And then it goes out interstate and
brilliant.
Out into the west as well. So you've got some connection with Perth, I think.
With Manjimup, which is near Margaret River. That's where the truffle country is in Australia, besides some in Tasmania. But my partner has a hotel out there, so we're very lucky to be able to immerse ourselves into the truffle country area and run a pub out there as well. So I've been involved now in, fortunately, learning a lot more about the back end of hospitality.
Yeah, there you go.
Right?
So you got truffles and high end.
Yeah.
And is it a high end pub or
real country
Aussie pub?
Yeah, real country Aussie pub. So so getting myself behind the bar and during COVID, I was actually caught over there for a couple of months too. So I was trying to run my business from there and help out at this pub. And I would certainly never, I've worked in bars before, but to actually run the restaurant there as well with the team was a challenge and something that was wonderful to experience, because now I walk into my restaurants with a whole different appreciation and a whole different perspective on everything that happens in the kitchen and the front of house and the floor of the restaurant.
Wow. I can just hear you put yourself in positions that, it's a challenge, but that's a positive kind of stress, right? Where you're in there, like you're just doing something new or in the moment.
I actually thought about this morning. So I'm driven by that. So I don't mind putting myself out there at all. My mother's always instilled in me to never give up and to try this, try that, be adventurous, have a go. It's absolutely in my genetic makeup. And on top of that, fear. I love it. It drives me. So it is a motivator for me. And I find that if I don't know how to do something, I'll go find out. It's not, I don't believe it's that hard. So
Oh, I think that's going to make some of our clip reel, our highlights, because I mean, you had answered some big questions in there, or at least touched on it. So the things like, how much of this, where these personality traits come from? Is it genetic? And, like you would know your family, your upbringing, and but then there's the environmental, and then all of that comes together. I guess it's hard to isolate one thing, but
I can't. Yeah, like I grew up with nothing. So I grew up in housing commission. Mum was a single mum, so I kind of grew up with that tough childhood, and I'm grateful for it. It's certainly instilled a drive in me. And I guess my son's 12 now, and I just never, ever wanted him to see me not have a go. It's so important in life just for him to try. And it doesn't matter if it doesn't work or it fails, whatever. he has to try. Just try.
Just hearing you describe that, and I can relate because I have a 9-year-old at the moment now, and she's just turned 9, but it's the same similar feeling, I feel like. So the kid is observing you having a go?
Yes.
And you feel that that's impactful for the child, right?
Essential. And I don't want to be sounding negative about the generation coming out, but there seems to be a little less motivation in them. And I find, or maybe that's just the children I'm seeing, but I just really hope that there's some drive. I hope that they want to achieve great things, and I hope my son sees that no matter what, I haven't given up. There's never a chance. It doesn't happen. It's not even on the cards. You just got to keep going.
That's cool. Yeah. And people listening in, yeah, for sure they would be inspired by it.
It's resilience, that. Right? And resilience is everything. It's getting back up every time, no matter what. So that's what I think I certainly feel has been imperative in every bit of the decision making I make in my business and going forward. You get knocked down and knocked back so many times.
And sometimes even a small step, like if you don't fix everything in one day, it's just a little chip away at fixing whatever you got to fix or moving it past
and prioritizing. Yeah. So that's really key. I write a list at night every night. And that list in the morning when I wake up after a sleep, I sometimes go, wow, that was so important last night. Now it's not that important. I know I can actually put that off or deal with that in a different way. And so that list gets written at night, and in the morning I rewrite that list every morning, because after sleep I find that I can actually adjust the way that I prioritize too. It's bizarre.
Here we go.
Yeah.
No, but these are little life hacks, and it's gold to be able to have you share that. What works for you, and then others can relate to some of the things.
Writing. I'm a bit of a list writer, but I also learned about writing a definitive aim. So I tried to work out what was important to me, and I'd write down what that was, and I'd write that sentence 5 times every morning. What it is I wanted to do, what I wanted to achieve, and how I was going to achieve that. So it was like a sentence I made, and I can remember when I first started my business, I worked out what I needed to cover. Let's say rent and food, and Jai goes to a nice school. So there was $60 that I needed to find every day for that. So there was a list of what I call it reverse engineering. I put down what I need to achieve and how I'm going to achieve that. And it was just little baby steps, but it felt so good, because once you wake up in the morning and you write that sentence 5 times, you're focused, you're ready to go. You know what it is that you need to achieve. So there was this definitive aim, I called it, and I used to write it down every morning, and it was what would focus and propel me to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, pen and paper, writing it down on your phone, just something that is you've committed to, and you can come back to it, right? Yeah,
it's great to have a look at it now 4 or 5 years ago and look what I was trying to achieve, and I'm like, wow, that was it.
How interesting. I'm a bit, just to relate, I'm a bit the same. I still have books, and I actually treasure those books. It's a little order of events, and if you can look back, it's like a little diary in a way, a to-do list, but it's like.
And you can see how much you've evolved. Like there's a lot of work that goes into achieving things, but also just as a human, so that master of self, how do you now perceive things? Like I had to learn how to understand ego. That was big. And understand how not to judge people. So always come from a place of no judgment. And these were things that I had to work on. So very different person to 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. I see that person evolving and getting a lot more thicker skin. So you actually stop. I mean, I care so much about what I do in people, but I also now stop caring so much if it's not going to serve me well.
Oh, that's interesting. So like you're really we're not talking about the businesses at all anymore. It's like yourself as do you identify with, are you the business or is the business here?
Yeah, that's a bit tricky. So the Lady Truffle logo and everything, had I have done this differently, maybe I wouldn't have penciled it in so tight to be about me, because it was personal branding, right? So I've got a social media page, which is Debbie Oliver, and then I've got a social media page that is my business, and one's obviously meant to be a lot more professional than the other, and quite often I've got to pull it back in to figure out what is okay to put out there about me and what is okay to put out for the business. And it just it keeps coming back into each other, and it's very you sometimes got to sit back and think, how do I make sure that they're separate but also be incredibly authentic? So I if people don't like me on social media, then maybe they're not going to do business with me, but that's okay, because you're finding your tribe anyway, and the people that do like you will find that they like the authentic you are the ones you want to do business with.
Yeah, well, I like that. I mean, finding the tribe, like you mentioned, that's kind of a movement out there, I think, with marketing people in circles. And
yeah, well, the social media does it for you anyway. People like you, or they unfollow you, they follow you, and you find that the people that stick with you are the people that actually don't mind who you are and what you're about.
Yeah, and you mentioned the separating or the integration of like person and business. I mean, it could go either way. It's whatever's right for the person, I guess. I do think that you can see it's a big benefit if you are tied to the business personally, because you can almost lean on that a bit and
you're invested in it, right?
Yeah, and people know maybe that's organically you're tied to it, and people appreciate you. And
I think when you have a small business and you are a business owner, that the whole passion about what you're doing must show. It must. People want to know that you care about what you're doing, because it means you care about. I remember saying to someone once, I don't want to sell anything of my product to somebody unless they can move it or sell it or be able to feel the magic of it, because my business doesn't work if theirs doesn't. So it's almost like a team effort, and it's like their business is in my business is in their business. So even when it comes to, say, a truffle talk, I'll go to a chef or a restaurant, I'll come and do a truffle talk to help you out, because I want your business to work.
Yeah.
It has to work, it has to tie in.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I just love that whole framework. It's almost like, I mean, in the old corporate days, they might call it selling through, and it's like that whole, everything goes all the way through, and everyone's looking after, so that everyone's, I guess, getting the value and appreciating. But yeah, like in a softer way, it's just about the magic. I mean, like you described it.
Yeah, and industry colleagues too. Like I put a boat cruise on at the end of COVID and invited what you would tend to call your competitors in the market. So I just said, guys, let's get together. And this is absolutely just because I know that everyone's been through so much right now. And it was wonderful, the energy and the vibe, and it was nothing. There was nothing about being competitors. It was about being in it all together. And that's what I mentioned with that connectivity in the industry. It's so important.
That's neat. Neat. Geez, you certainly shared a lot today with the different aspects of the personal, how you approach things. I think a lot of people can benefit just from the fresh thinking. Again, I think it's in you got people overseas learning about Australians, how they've tackled some big problems. You've traveled overseas a bit?
Yeah, a lot. I lived overseas for 10 years, so I feel that I've got a lot of connections over there, and I enjoy cultures and people and everything they have to offer. But I do travel over there as well with my business, so I have to go and keep my connections tight. And even expos, big giant food expos, where they teach us about the movement and the direction of the food industry. The last one I went to was Anuga in Germany, and I learnt all about crickets and how they were going to become the next big food. And
the insect?
Yeah, the crickets, and also things like where's the industry going and the trends. So obviously everyone wants to be eating something that's good for them. So ideally, if it's got some benefit, whether it's mental, that mental connection with our food and our gut health, but there was a whole big shift in that direction. And then there's sustainability. So everyone was very, very connected with how certain foods or farming or soil or product or even packaging, it all had to be sustainable and connected with the goodness or the production or the benefit of the earth. So that was really, really big at the time. And there was one last one that I remember seeing that was interesting for the trends of the food. It was I've lost it now, but it will come back to me. Purpose.
Purpose, yes.
Yes, purpose. It was, how do you make sure that your business is somehow giving back? So even with my business, we my son and I came up with donating a can of dog or cat food for every truffle sale we did last year. So that truffle truck that you see there, the whole back of the ute was filled with cans of dog and cat food, and we gave it to an animal shelter. So you've got to try to work out how that purpose fits in with business. So that was great to go and see those kind of expos and learn the trends for the industry that you work in. I think it's similar right through. Not just hospitality and food, but right through.
Yeah, neat. And that 10 years, I'm just trying to think about that experience and then maybe coming back afterwards. But was it 10 years in one spot or just a bit of nomadic?
All over, yeah. So I lived in Japan and Hong Kong. I lived in London. And I spent a lot of time in the States and in France as well. So I was very lucky. Amazing spots. I also spent some time in Senegal, which was different. Okay. My favourite place on earth, Cyprus. Loved it.
Cyprus, geez, that place has. Yeah, these places go through evolutions, right? Every place has had glory moments and tough times, and it's hard to keep track of who's where these days. But the just so I can capture that lifestyle, was it just a bit of like a step away from employment, or did you have some secondary income that could allow you to do both?
At the time I was my partner was an investment banker, so I was very fortunate to be financially stable. Yeah. Okay. And we travelled a lot. He was an expat, so he would be in certain places for months on end. So I was very lucky, and a luxury high-end lifestyle. It was great, a lot of fun. But also for me, I'm so I think it's good for women to work, and I'd say that with love. I just find that we've got quite an active mind. So for me, being able to work or to get myself involved or sink my teeth into something was really important. So I did a lot of charity work while I was over there. But no, I found the lady of leisure wasn't for me, that's for sure. I need to work.
Yeah, no, I mean, interesting. I was just interesting to see how, because I'm all for travel and I think that can benefit, but it's often people can't do it for financial reasons and just moving around. But and then I'm just trying to draw the link between this travel or international experience and then coming back to do something like starting a business, because you started it well after the travel, right?
Yeah, so after I left my partner at the time and came back to Australia, and I worked in Sydney in the travel industry, and that was obviously because I'd travelled so much. It was so easy to be able to offer that expertise and that experience to people. So the travel industry was where I was for maybe 4 years. Then I fell pregnant with my son, so I had to come back to the coast to be around family. And I moved here and I got into the corporate game where I worked for the medical industry or dental industry and marketing, PR and branding. So that took up the next few years while I was suffocating in a work environment in a corporate office. I got to shift that a little bit to going out onto the road and branding practices around the country. Rebranding and acquiring practices that we did from medical, well, it was actually dentists at the time. And that is when I started to feel that I needed to get back into something that I was passionate about.
Yeah, neat. Well, I mean, there'll be lots of different life stages for people. And I think it is difficult to probably be an entrepreneur your whole life. You know what I mean? And maybe that's, I'm just looking for interesting mix of experience to say, like, I think it is a life experience to be able to start something and create something, whether it succeeds or fails, but just to go through that experience. And
you know, one of the biggest conversations I have, especially when I go to a lot of lunches with ladies and networking events, is that jump to doing something you haven't done before. And I have no problem with doing that. I'll give it a go. Whereas some people I know are very stuck in doing something for 10, 20 years and they're too scared to take that jump. Whereas I'm driven by that fear. I can't wait to learn something new, and it's no problem for me to try something new. And that's where I thrive. So that was fun. I don't even know what's next if I was to take another job, but God knows what it would be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's good and fresh thinking, because I think there's probably a train of thought out there that if you're going to start something, do it while you're young. You know, there's no real financial risk. You don't have a mortgage probably, and this and that. But you don't know a lot at that time either. So there's sort of, I like to be the champion for, you know what, if you've done the early career, just a bit of that starting experience, and then maybe there's a corporate job where you work for somebody and
it's a stepping stone.
You don't
right?
really love it.
You realize that that's vital for what I had to do now.
But it's almost like almost like a no-go zone, where once you get into that corporate world, it's like a lot of people will talk you out of it, and for financial reasons, and like it's risk management, so risk tolerance basically. But yeah, it's almost harder to start something at that point because a million different factors try to talk you out of it. But you're almost in a prime position to start. Like I get the feeling like it really worked out for you.
Yeah, and the corporate job, it's like I said, it's a stepping stone almost. I now knew there was an accounting department, there was a marketing department, there was a PR department, there was like all these different sectors of the business that were necessary to make it work, like a big engine room. And then when you start your own business, you start to recognize whether there's certain strengths or weaknesses you may have in those certain departments. Definitely different personality types. Marketing didn't get along with accounting, and, HR, everyone was very, very different. So when you start your own business, you really need to put all those hats on. And so the corporate world certainly sets you up for that. It allows you to understand personality types and strengths and weaknesses that you may or may not have. And I found that vital, really good. I look back at it now and I'm grateful, grateful that was part of my career path or my journey, to be able to go out on my own. And I just learn. I have this capacity to learn as I go. I don't mind that.
I imagine that could pay off for sure. And look, I heard you just smile after looking back, and we like to highlight little moments of celebration and things like that. So, do you feel like are you at a point now where you do celebrate the success, like 5-year milestone?
I don't. There's a saying, isn't it? Don't sweat the small stuff.
Sure.
I'm certainly getting to that point. So I'm not going to sit. I believe in myself more. Yeah, I understand what I'm capable of. So I'm more forgiving of myself. I'm more understanding of myself, and I stress less because I say to myself, you dealt with this, you handled that, you will be okay to deal with this. So you learn to just believe in yourself and have a go. And nothing, what's the worst that can happen? You pass away, and then what are you going to do?
Famous last words. But yeah.
So just have a go. As long as your intention's there, good intentions, and you're just having a go with good intentions.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like that. What's the worst that could happen? But then don't even hesitate. Like, just let it happen, and then take what comes at you and enjoy it.
Yes.
If fair to say, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Enjoy the process. That was super fun. I had something written on my page here. I just want to mention it. The Truffle Kerfuffle. Can you just bring us back to that?
Yeah,
that's an Australian thing.
In Australia, we have a festival in Manjimup, and it's called the Truffle Kerfuffle. I love the name, and it's in its 10th year. Well, actually, last year was its 10th year, but it was cancelled due to COVID. So this year, I'll be flying over some of my big chefs and my accounts and people in the food industry that have supported and helped me throughout this whole journey over to Manjimup to enjoy that festival. So it's a couple of days of truffle events and truffle food and truffle knowledge, and it's a really cool little event of fun to do with truffle.
Nice one.
All truffle.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the thing that a lot of people don't realise is that Manjimup, where this Truffle Kerfuffle is held, has a massive food bowl. It's incredible. There's cherries and all of the stone fruits and avocados and wine, and it's a wonderful food bowl that's just up and coming and getting bigger and better. So that truffle country experience and that Truffle Kerfuffle I'll be able to enjoy with some of my fine foods and chefs and get them over there. 25th of June, that's on. Yeah.
Brilliant.
25th of June weekend. But truffle season runs June, July and August. Okay. So there's plenty of truffle everywhere there throughout that season, winter.
Awesome. Look, that's been great. We'll definitely get some links up along with the episodes and everything so people can explore on their own time.
Yeah, wonderful.
Is there a place that we can follow what you're up to? Just tell us your website again.
Yeah, so I've got ladytruffle.com.au is my website. I've also got my social media accounts, so Debbie Oliver and Lady Truffle Fine Foods. Excellent.
Really appreciate you coming on, Debbie. That's been great on many fronts, personal, industry, and just a bit of the life hacking. And really appreciate coming on.
Thank you. What a pleasure.
All right, we'll have you back anytime. I'm a busy person, but we'll certainly get some samples to showcase for people because I think it's good to see it in its final form. All right, thank you.
Thanks.